Welcome to a video from thedigitallife.com. In this video I'm going to show you how to import custom wave files, custom samples into the Korg Modwave, Korg Wavestate and use them in your own performances on those synths. It's a relatively straightforward procedure, but there are a few tricks to watch out for and a few little tips for that as well. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to get some wave files. We're going to bring them in using Korg Sample Builder, which is the main tool that you're going to need. And then I'm going to prepare those samples, get them in Korg Sample Builder, and then transfer those across to Modwave and Wavestate. I've got Wavestate Native up here to show you how it works with Wavestate Native, but this works with, I've got Modwave Native, I should say. This works with Wavestate Native, Wavestate Hardware, all the different synths. There's just a slight difference to sending the banks over, but I'll show you that in this video as well. So before I start, I want to explain the structure of sample memory in the Korg Wavestate and Modwave. They're identical, really, for the way that they treat samples. It's a bit confusing at first, but once you understand it, it's relatively straightforward. So with Sample Builder, that's the main tool that you're going to need. The Modwave and Wavestate have built-in samples, but they've also got user samples. So when you send your user samples down to the synth, what it does, it prepares them and sends them over in bulk to the synth. So it trims off any space and it effectively compresses them. It's a bit like zipping them up, but it sends them down to the synth. When you do the transfer again, it clears out what's been there already and sends them down again. So that means that if you've got some samples in there and then you create a new sample bank and send that down, it doesn't add to those on your synth, it replaces them. So you've got to manage that in Sample Builder. That's the key. So that's how you avoid losing samples. So the way I do this, and this is the key to managing it, is I have a master bank and I maintain that with all my samples in, and I transmit that down to the synth each time. So if I open my master bank, here you can see I open that up and there's going to be a lot of samples in that one because this is my main master bank. So here you go, here's my bank. So here you can see all the samples that I've released recently. Incidentally, all these are available on thedigitallife.com. So I've got my D110 collections, there's Fairlight ones, there's some other sets that I've been working on. Akai sets are up there as well. So this is my master bank now. So if I wanted to send that to my Modwave, I'll just select Modwave from the device ID. I could send it to Wavestate, do send bank, and that sends out down that bank. It cleans it up, prepares it, sends it down, replacing everything that's there. So if I didn't do that, if I just had a new bank and had one sample in it and sent that down, it would just send that one sample, removing the other bank. So if I wanted to get back to my original bank, then I can just open the ID bank. So if I, for example, if I open the D110 volume 1, that is just the D110 volume 1. If I send that down, then that will send just those down and nothing else, and the Fairlight ones won't be on the synth anymore. I could send them separately. So if you're doing a session with Fairlight samples, then you can send that down. Or like I said, you can have the master section. So what I'm going to do for this demo is I'm going to open my master bank, because that's got all my samples in. Right, so there's all my samples. Now, what if I wanted to do a new samples? So I'm going to start with some samples here. I've got some Mellotron samples that I was sent, but I'm not going to distribute these. I'm just using these as a good example. So you can see the keys have been named, or the samples have been named. So I know this sample is the key A2. So that in our preferences, we can get it to use the file names. Sometimes it'll detect it just from the metadata, sometimes use the file names. But if I was to bring in, let's bring C3 on its own, drag it in there. I've got the key stage MIDI'd up as well. If you go into preferences, you can set the MIDI. So I've got a key stage on there. That sounds okay around that stage. Once you start getting higher up, it doesn't sound as realistic. But that's okay because we've got all these other ones. Now, what I could do is bring C4 in, drag that in, and you can see now we've got C3 The lower is C3. And then once we get to there, it's going to that E, isn't it? It's switching to the other sample. So you can see it knows the key is C4, but the range is from there. But I could change that range and move it down. So now we've got effectively two keys split across. So it's still not that realistic, but getting better. Now I have got the opportunity to say, well, look, we've got all these. So I can select all these, Control A, drag them in. And that has detected them correctly, and it's set the ranges as well. So it's using more memory because we've got more samples in there, but it's going to sound better. So that sounds pretty good. So that's how you import the samples in. If you want to adjust it and say it wasn't C G2, it was A sharp that the key was sampled, you can just put it in there. And like I said, you can set the range and you can set the color as well. The other things you can do in there, you can set volume levels. If it's a mono sample, it'll just show you one. If it's a stereo sample, it will show you the left and right values. And you can tune it as well. When I did the Fairlight collection, they were all out of tune, the samples, so I had to tweak and tune those. The next part is the looping. So for that, I'm going to switch to an existing sample. So here's the D110 electric organ. You see it's got me, it knows it's a stereo sample, so it's giving me the two options. You can lock that off as well so that they stay together. Let's have a listen. You can just about hear that clicking sound. That's the looping. That's probably the trickiest part to do on here. So these bars here, the green is the start point. If I zoom in, you can see it actually, the wave, there's a bit of a silence at the beginning. So you can use that green to trim that so it starts at the right point. Then the orange bar then is the start of the loop, and the red bar is the end of the loop. And to show you in more extreme example, if I bring them close together and we zoom in, if I start playing that note now, you can hear that, and it'll change if I bring it in. So obviously these loops are important to get right because that doesn't sound very good. So the further apart you have those, the less you hear the loop points. But then sometimes they sound different. So this one is a nice fixed one, but something like a soundtrack sound on there is really difficult to loop because it's constantly evolving. So you've got to sort of play with these. What I tend to do is just drag them where I think that it looks like it should repeat. So this one, you can see there's a sort of a repetition maybe there. It peaks down and then it peaks back up there. So maybe that would work. You can still hear that clicking, and the reason it clicks is where the waveform starts. So if I start it just as it's peaking up there and go to the end point and try and match that there, we'll probably reduce that clicking. It's not perfect, but it's for you to play around. You can alter the frequency of the repeat as well. So if I go and repeat, so you can hear it changes, effectively changing the pitch of the loop. I'm going to leave that as it is for now. Let's put that in a nice red color, that one. So then you can see how when I've multi-sampled these, I'm going to color code these so it just looks a bit different. So you can see the next sample that I did is this one. So you can see that I've already done loop points for this one, and then the next one, and so on. So that's how I've split the keyboard up. The clicking can be hard to get rid of, but depending on where the loop points are. But once you get it in the synth, you can sort of mask it a little bit as well. So let me find another example. This electric piano. I don't want any looping on that so I could put it as one shot. The other thing you can do is boost it as well. Boost that. If you find one sample of the set is a bit quieter, you can boost them. So that's easy on those because they were just fixed. Or they're just one shots. Now another thing there is there's a fixed pitch which is great for drums. So if I show you another one here, you can see here I sampled my Yamaha RX5 drum machine. I've loaded those in on each key separately and put them as fixed pitch. So that means they don't adjust the tuning when you play them across the keyboard. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. Like maybe toms, you don't need them fixed pitch, you want them to change. But in this case, for the drums, I want them as fixed pitch. So I've just stacked those up like that so I can play it individually, one key at a time. So that's a good example of a drum kit. So let's have a look at doing a complete one from scratch, and then I can send that down to the synth. So this set here is a Mellotron M300. Now you see the file naming, so we can see clearly it's A#2, but it's got that -1 on the end. I think that will confuse it, so let's just try. So it should be C3, this one, if I bring it in. Let's put it as C4. Let's see what the C4 it does. Let's put it as C7. It has got confused by those. We could try doing the other method. Use the metadata. Let's see what that does. They still put it as C4. They still put it as C7. So I think what's happened there, those file names have confused it. So the easiest thing for me to do, if I change that file name, will that improve the situation? Yes, it does straight away. So you can see file naming is actually quite important. So what I'm going to do, so what I'll do is, so what I would need to do is to rename all those files. Now luckily, here's one I did earlier on the string section one. So let's get all those wave files, drag them in, and they've come in okay. Now I haven't looped these because the Mellotron didn't loop because it was a tape sampler, so they don't need looping. But let's save these now. So I'm going to call this Mellotron string section demo. So we'll call it Mellotron string section. Okay, so you do need to save it. You save it as a multi-sample. So we can save it now. I'm going to save it. I already have one done called that, but I'm going to save it as Mellotron string section. So that saves it as a multi-sample file. Then the bank is made up of those multi-sample files. So it's automatically going to be in here because I was in this bank when I created that one. There you can see it. But if I create, and let me just save that bank. But I could create a new bank and just have those Mellotrons and send that down. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Right, so that's that one ready. So now to get it across to the synth, a couple of things we can do. We can just do send bank, which will send it down to the synth. I can pick the synth, I can send it to my Wavestate. If you're using the plugin, what the plugin does is slightly different, but it watches for a folder. So the plugin watches for a folder. So this is my folder that it watches, and that actually looks for compiled banks, and you can have multiple banks on the plugins. It's slightly different, but I still maintain the same idea of just having one. So I know that is where the plugin is looking. So if I go back to the sample builder, save bank for plugin, it's going to put it in that folder which the Modwave native is watching, ID samples, save that, update. In fact, I'll close that as well. So that's going to prepare it and send that down to, or get it ready for the Modwave. Okay, so that's sent that down. I'm going to now show you how I send it to the Modwave. Let's pick my Modwave. I'm going to show you how I send it to my Wavestate, the actual keyboard. So there's Wavestate. Just select that one, send bank, and that does the same thing we've just seen. It's a bit slower because it's got to transfer it over. So let's open up Modwave native. And I'll create an initial performance. Select a sample. If I look, ID samples, this was the name of my bank, you'll find them all there. And if I scroll down, I should see my Mellotron. So there's my Mellotron string section. So you can see it back over on the editor. It's sending those down. It's transferring data on the synth. So now if I remove oscillator 2, there you can hear the Mellotron strings. So pretty simple now. I can save that, but before I do that, I can just give it a bit of do you want some chorus? Yeah, maybe. We definitely want tape echo, and I'll give it a bit of main effects just as an example. Let's give it. So now they sort of come alive like that. Incidentally, that's finished during the transfer. There's a lot of multi-samples, as you can see on this one. Some of them have got a lot of zones, like those drum kits. 38 zones on there. The zones, by the way, is what takes up the RAM, and the samples are taking up this storage size. So I've got quite, if I got some of these zones, that would reduce this bit, but I've still got plenty of room for the samples. Okay, so there's my Tron strings. And that's it, really. It's as simple as that. Let's transfer this over. We can have a look at it on the Wavestate in a second. I'll just quickly show you on the Modwave editor, just in case you've not got the native version and it looks a bit unfamiliar. This is the librarian. So if you're used to the physical synth, you can see it's the same thing. But I can find my Mellotron strings. There we go, and create the performance that way. On the Wavestate, it's exactly the same. You can just find them in the user samples in the same way. Or if you're using a wave sequence, you can find them in the user section as well. See, there's all my samples. So that's it, really. That's how you bring them in. So the other thing you might want to do is distribute those. So if you're going to distribute them, there's a couple of things you've got to do. So let's say I wanted to make these available like I've done with the D110 collection. So let's go in here. You can see all my D110 performances. So what I usually do is put it into all data, all the D110, which I categorize into a collection, select them all, and you can export that as a bundle. And that would be my D110 bundle. I can distribute that. If I gave you that and you put on your Modwave without bringing the sample files in, then they wouldn't work. There'd be no samples. So what you need to do, as well as doing that, you have to then prepare the bank for transfer, and then you can zip it up and send it to someone. So for doing that, what I tend to do is I'd do you a new bank, and then I would add the multi-samples. So let's go. So there, as you can see, I've created some Mellotron ones. So let's add those multi-samples like that. Use the shift to do the multi-select. There we go. And then you would do this consolidate bank files. Oh, now we need a name, so we'll call it. These are Shane and Parker samples, so I'm not distributing these, but the D110s and the others, you can see these on my on the digitallifestyle.com. So that's my bank. I can save that bank as Mellotron samples. Okay, so then I can consolidate these bank files. And then what you need to do is I create a folder ready for upload and use that folder. And what that does, it grabs all those WAV files, whether they're on your C drive or your D drive, or they're in the documents folder or in the downloads folder, wherever they are. They could be scattered anywhere, and when you distribute them, it needs to bring them all together. So what it's done, it's consolidated those. So if we go and have a look in my sample builder folder, go to the ready for upload, you'll see there it's created a Mellotron samples, which was the name of the bank. It's created the bank master file, and it's created the individual multi-samples and the WAV files that are linked to that as well, because it's got to have those in the distribution. So then what I would do, I would just zip that folder up, upload that, and then when you bring in those down to another synth, you download that folder, unzip it, and then you could go back to your master bank. So let me go back to mine. Of course, mine already including it, but you get the idea. Here's the files, and I could bring those into my master bank like that. It already knows they're already there, so let's skip that. But that was how I then could maintain my bank. If you didn't, the other thing you could do is just open that Mellotron samples bank file, and that would just have those, and you can send those down as well. So that's it, really. It's a relatively straightforward process once you get your head around it, but it's so flexible and opens up so many possibilities. You can get WAV files from anywhere. You can make your own. I sampled the Roland D110 from up in the right there, and that's where I've been uploaded. I'm probably going to do a separate video on how I did that bit, because I use a separate piece of software to bring those in. So I'll do that as a separate video. But you can download these WAV files. They could be drum sounds, they could be synth sounds, classic synth sounds, brand new synth sound, whatever you want, and you can import them in and get them into your Modwave or Wavestate and use them in your wave sequences on the Wavestate as you do with the other samples, or combine them. You can do you can modify, you can do frequency modulation with a sample on the Modwave, so you can take a sine wave and frequency modulate it by a sample, and all that kind of stuff. So there's loads of stuff you can do. So hopefully that makes it clear to understand. Please let me know in the comments. Thanks to everybody who's asked me about this. Quite a few people asked me, and some people have sent me, like Sean did, sent me some samples. Get in touch, comments, or you can email me in@digitallifestyle.com. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.